to City Hall. Remember I told you outside, this is the seat of all the things, the decision making. This room right here is where all that action happens. I'm going to turn it over to Ashley Jackson for our presentation.
Welcome everyone. My name is Ashley Jackson. I'm the city clerk for the city of Bowling Green. I am so glad you're here, and what a great turnout that Karen has put together for this. And we have not done this in a while. I guess 2020 was the last one that we had done here, and so I'm really happy to see your faces, some familiar faces, which is really nice. But we will get started. This will be very informal. I am set up like this, which is really odd. Typically, this podium stands out in the middle, but my backs would be to you all, so I didn't want to do that. So I'm kind of in an awkward spot, so bear with me. Very informal. We are going to have fun. I want you to ask questions. Stop and just raise your hand or say, hey, just, can we back up if you've got questions. I don't want to go through this really fast, but there's going to be some things. Obviously, in your folders, you have a copy of this presentation so that you can go back and look at it later if there's something you wanted to remember, or you can make notes. Also, you have nice little goodie bags that were put together by our public information officer as part of from our city manager's department. So please enjoy your little goodies that you have in your bags. And then as we start into our welcoming remarks, I do want to introduce a few people that are with us today. So from the city clerk's office, we have Assistant City Clerk Hope Spiller. Then we also have Jen Edwards, who is our Records Management Coordinator. So they are part of the city clerk's office. We are all within the city manager's department, and as most of you probably know, we are a city manager form of government. So our boss is the most important man, other than the mayor, but he is the one who runs our day-to-day activities for the city. And then also a part of the city manager's department is our public information officer and executive assistant to the city manager and mayor and commissioners, and that's Debbie Highland West, and she's right here. So I will talk about them and their divisions and their functions a little bit as we go through this presentation. For those of you that are in the really nice comfy chairs around the perimeter, you have screens in front of you, so you will also be able to see what is on the, what is up ahead. And then I know for those of you here in the middle, you'll see the screens up above, and the audience can see that. But please feel free to stop me as we go along if you have questions. So real quick, hope you know who your elected officials are. But here's a picture of our mayor, Mayor Todd Alcott. Then we have Commissioner Carlos Bailey, Commissioner Dana Beasley Brown, Commissioner Melinda Hill, and Commissioner Sue Perigin. So those make up the 5 Board of Commissioners who are all elected in by you and all the other residents of the city of Bowling Green. So we're just going to go over today what the Board of Commissioners' responsibilities are, the types of things that they approve and see on their agendas, and then we will also get into some other functions of the city clerk role, which deals with open meetings, open records, which are very important for being transparent and having good official records kept for the city. So the Board of Commissioners will just go through their primary duties. They enact ordinances, municipal orders, and resolutions. Those are all very, very important because obviously they're the laws and the regulations that the citizens have to abide by. But not only that, they also have responsibilities for purchases and things of that nature. So ordinances are local laws. So we have a code of ordinances. Those are accessible on our website. If you've never been to our website, I encourage you to go there. It is a wealth of information for you. We put lots of documents on there and information for each of you to be able to have that is accessible. Municipal orders, those are internal actions. Those are typically our purchases, things that we bid out. Those have to be approved. Also, any agreements that we have with other agencies, those are done by municipal order. Resolutions, we don't do those very often. Those are usually an expression of some type of special interest. If you date back though to the 40s, 50s, maybe 60s, Jen can correct me if I'm wrong, those were all resolutions in that time frame. Municipal orders weren't a thing. So at that point in time, it was mainly resolutions, but as things change, laws change, we went to municipal orders. So your Board of Commissioners meets on the first and third Tuesday of every month. Sometimes there's special meetings that are necessary, and those will be, you'll be notified of those. Agendas and minutes, again, are posted on our website. If you go to the elected officials site, you will be able to see our minutes, our agendas, and you will be able to watch previous Board of Commissioners meetings, which is very nice to be able to do, so that we can refer you to something that may have happened at a previous meeting. And those meetings are broadcasted on our Channel 4. Does anyone here watch Channel 4? Yeah, I mean, really, truly, there's a lot of good programming on there. Our Public Information Office, which is overseen by Debbie, those are opportunities for you to get to know us, to know what's going on in the community, what the city's working on. So this is a great time for you to be able to either watch the Board of Commissioners meeting that's live streamed, or go back and watch some of our programming that we do. So this is just a, yes?
Are they open to the public to come?
Yes. So we will talk about that as well, but all of our meetings are open meetings. They are open to the public, and they have to be by law. So you would come here and you would sit in the audience, and then there's an opportunity for public comments as well at the end of all of our meeting agendas. Yeah, good question.
And is it open city? It's not city and county?
No, this would be just a city meeting, but obviously we have residents that come from the county as well. They may also be able to express their opinions. It does not matter where you reside. If you want to come make public comments, if you live in the city, you have a vested interest in what is going on, and you may have a complaint or you want to express some concerns, you have the ability to do that. Definitely, we would not discredit the fact if you were not a city resident. The Office of City Manager, this is just the makeup of our department. And so obviously there's the divisions of the city clerk, Public Information Office, and then we have an internal auditor as well. And then those individuals that are under the Public Information Office are our graphic designer and our broadcast specialist. And then as I introduced, in my office is the Assistant City Clerk and the Records Management Coordinator. Okay, so we're gonna go over open meetings and public.
Who's the city manager?
So that's Jeff Meisel. Unfortunately, he would typically be here today, but he is traveling for business. And then I do believe later next week, you will meet the Assistant City Manager, CFO, Katie Schaller Ward. She will be doing some budget finance information with you all next week. So open meetings and public records. All right, so Kentucky Open Meetings Act. There are lots of rules and regulations that are established through the Kentucky Revised Statutes that the city clerk's office and the city as a whole has to abide by. So we take it very seriously in our department that we have to be sure we're abiding by all of those rules and regulations. I won't go through every statute. You will not want to be here for that. You will all be put to sleep by the time I'm done. But all meetings are able to take place if there's a quorum. And of the Board of Commissioners, there are 5, which includes the mayor. They all have an equal vote. And that is, again, because we're a city manager form of government. So there has to be 3 or more present in order to have an actual meeting that constitutes a quorum. And then obviously these meetings are held, again, for the public, and it is to be held for business purposes. Lots of action happens. If you've ever looked at our agendas or been to a Board of Commissioners meeting, you know there's various things that take place. Again, any gatherings, regardless of the location or time, other than a closed session, which those are allowed, And there are exemptions under state statute that allow us to be able to go into closed session. Sometimes it may be, for an example, a purchase of property. And if we were to talk about that publicly, it could affect the value of the specific piece of property. So it's really important for us to be able to have those conversations during a closed session, which would just include some key staff. The city clerk stays there to make sure that they're following all the rules and regulations. And then the Board of Commissioners would be present. And everyone else that is here in this room would have to exit the room during that closed session. But we are allowed to do that. We don't do those very often, but at least there's an opportunity for us to be able to do that. And again, I mentioned that you cannot have a meeting unless you have that quorum. Yes, ma'am.
So your staff is here at every meeting?
No, it's not my staff. It's just myself, typically the city manager, the city attorney, CFO, assistant city manager, and then sometimes department heads as well, depending on the topics. Yeah. I'm sure my staff is probably glad they're not at every meeting. Okay, some general requirements that, make sure, yeah, okay. Adopting rules of procedures, how to conduct the meetings, that is all in our code of ordinances. Again, you can go online to see those. We have to set a time and a place for the regular meetings. Again, first and third Tuesday. If we were to ever change that, which we could, then we would have to send out a public notice letting the public and the media know that we've changed our meeting dates and times. Same thing with a location, but it's always this location. Typically, if we have an off-site location, it becomes a special call meeting, which also has some other regulations that we have to abide by. We allow, obviously, public observation, public input, as we had already talked about and mentioned, public comments. No person is required to identify themselves just for showing up. Obviously, we like to take your name if you come to the podium and make public comments. We used to do this, and I'm really not sure why, and I'm the one who brought it up, that people would tell their address. Well, it's really a violation of open records because your address would be exempt from disclosure. That's personal, private information. So we stopped doing that. A lot of times people still, it's a habit. They did it for years and years and years to tell where they live. We're not concerned with where you live. Again, it doesn't matter if you live in a surrounding county, if you live outside the city limits, you have the right to make public comments at a public meeting. And then news media is obviously here a lot of times. They're allowed to be here. They're allowed to record, take pictures. And then I had mentioned about special meetings. They require a 24-hour notice, and we do a very good job now that we have a really heavy presence on social media. We post that information for those that are on social media. We post it on our website, and those have to get faxed out to the media per statute. And then also on a special meeting, you cannot deviate away from what's on that agenda. So if it's a special call meeting, it has to be what is on that agenda. A regular meeting, something could be added. So from the floor, during a meeting, a commissioner may, or the mayor may make a motion to add something to the agenda. They have the ability to do that if it is a regular meeting. If it is a special meeting, they cannot. They can only go by what is on the agenda that was pre-planned in advance, if that makes sense. Meeting procedures. Yes, sir. No, our city manager works very closely with the department heads, and that includes the city attorney and then the clerk's office. So like, for example, today is our agenda day, if you will. So we get the agenda prepared and sent out to the department heads and Board of Commissioners the Thursday before the Tuesday Board of Commissioners meeting. So we have one next Tuesday. So Hope and I are working on that this morning. And so the city manager works very closely with us. He sponsors most of the items that are on the agenda. So that's why you'll see at the bottom of a municipal order ordinance, it'll say sponsored by. usually the city manager. And again, because the city manager is the administrator, he is the person who oversees our day-to-day activities. He typically is going to sponsor those types of bids that are on there for approval, agreements, things of that nature, budget amendments that are done by ordinance. So those things that are on there, he has worked together collaboratively with other departments or department heads to make sure of what we need to be doing in order to move along with a project or something that's coming up. Hope that answered your question.
So he has the ability to decline a topic?
He does to some degree, and then a lot of times he will check with the board. So maybe he needs to be sure that they all are aware that something is coming. Then if he had a majority, 3 or more, to say, we're not interested, we need more time in this, then he would back off. That would not go on the agenda right now for approval. So he does have a lot of elements of people he has to work with. And then sometimes it may be that he brings it forward and sponsors it, or an elected official can sponsor anything on the agenda as well that you may not get 3 or more votes for. So if you don't receive a majority of votes, it does not pass. So that is something that can happen. There's lots of different elements to that. I know that was a lot of information, but great questions. Thank you. So the meeting again is released no later than Friday. Typically what we will do, the clerk's office will post the agenda on the website first thing Friday morning. So it'll go out to the Board of Commissioners first, Thursday evening late usually, and then it'll get posted on our website. So those are always available the Friday before the meeting. Again, public comments, we've gone over some of this. And just speaking, again, it does say address here for the official record. Again, that is not required. We do limit the time during your comments. The ordinance states 5 minutes. So a person has 5 minutes to come to the podium and make remarks. And the mayor is the presiding officer. That means he is the one, obviously sitting in that center seat, and he is the one that will be sure to time those who are speaking to make sure they don't go over the 5 minutes. Also, he is the one who's making sure everything is orderly. If he is not here, we have a mayor pro tem, and that is Commissioner Sue Perigin. And so if he is absent for any reason, she will step in his place and she will become the presiding officer. Okay, we're gonna go over open records. And in our office, our records management coordinator, she oversees the open records, but the city clerk's office is the official custodian of all records through the city. We do have various official custodians that are in some departments or divisions, and we will touch on those. But all records that are created by the city, those are considered to be a part of the Open Records Act. So it does not matter what type of form it's in. It can be a hard copy, physical form. It can be an electronic. Those are all subject to open record. And so we also have some exclusions, and we'll touch on that. They're called exemptions. But if the city maintains the record, we are going to have a lot of different actions that we have to take to make sure that we are preserving those records and maintaining them appropriately. Any person shall have access. Again, you come to our meetings, you can speak. We also take great pride in the fact that all of our records are accessible to you. We should have them in some form or fashion, and that is why we have what's called open records requests. And I don't know if any of you may have filed one before, but lots of people do. Since I started in 2006, we have probably tripled in the number of open records requests we get a year. So when I started, we averaged, I'm gonna say about 120 to 150. So now we're about at least approaching close to 400 a year. And does that include police as well? No. Okay, so police, obviously, they have their own records division, so they have their own custodian that helps get those out. We would not have the manpower to be able to produce records for police as well. That's every time someone wants a police report. Any reports that come from them, you would go to them directly, and they have their own form, and those are all available online and very easily accessible and easy to complete. General requirements, a public record, it shall be open for inspection for its entire life, and what that means is that another requirement we have is that the Kentucky Department for Libraries and Archives, they have an actual schedule for us that we have to abide by. So there are records that we must keep for 3 years, 10 years, 20 years. When you get into personnel records, those have to be kept 60, 70, 80 years. So that's a very lengthy amount of time, which also means we have to retain them somewhere. So we are very fortunate to have a records area that is actually on the back part of our City Hall Annex building. So that is where Jen works, all alone by herself. She's not in the building with us, but she's over there with all of the records that have to be kept, and some of which are personnel human resources department records, and those are kept in an even more secure room that only certain few individuals have access to. So that's why there's a lot of dynamics. I hope you all are learning a lot through this process of understanding. We have a lot of rules and regulations we have to abide by, and it's very important that we are keeping records like we should. And then obviously facilities, you can come in, you can look and set in our facility, look at records. You don't have to obtain copies, but a lot of people do. We do charge for those copies. 10 cents a page, but I will tell you, we're in an electronic world now. So we are very, very fortunate, and the citizens are very fortunate that we can email you records now, and it doesn't cost you anything at all. We don't have a requirement, but if you do ask, statute now has kind of come up with the times of saying if you were to ask for something and you asked for it electronically, we would have to provide it if we have it available. But a lot of times you don't even have to ask. We're just going to send it to you in your email so that, number one, it's more efficient for all of us, and you're able to get it, and it's at no cost to you. And that's what we're here for. I mean, I have been a believer since I started. It's about getting you the information that you asked for. It is not about the city retaining 10 cents a page for a copy, because it's definitely not. We're not recouping any costs to our printers and copiers and all of the expenses that are associated with that. We adopt and display rules and regulations. Those are in all of the areas that are custodians of record. So for example, in the city clerk's office, our business license division, that's over in our finance department, our building division at neighborhood and community services, and our police department. They should all have rules and regulations displayed. Those come from the clerk's office. It actually has my signature at the bottom. That will tell them the location of where specific records are kept and where they should go if they want things in those particular divisions. And again, building division, police, and our business license. If they are not in those categories specifically, everything else falls under the city clerk's office. So that's where those records would be requested from. Again, protecting records from any damage or disorganization, we're able to do that by having a records retention area. And then ensuring efficient and timely action on inspection. This little picture here is a picture of how our municipal orders, ordinances, resolutions, presentations from work sessions, those are all kept in these 5-inch 3-ring binders that can be very, very heavy if you overload them too much, but that is what they look like on the shelving of our records retention area. Open records process. So you submit a written request Those forms are accessible online, as I had mentioned. They're fillable. We make them so easy for people now. You just click, you just type, you fill in your information. We give you an actual email address that you can send that to. And it goes right into our city clerk's open records box, email box that we monitor. If Jen is not here, she has backups. She has myself, the assistant city clerk, so we all work together in making sure that we meet all of the requirements. You have to be specific on your request, telling us what you need. Obviously, printing your name legibly, signing them, and then also they have to be accessible to you during our business hours, whether you're picking them up or you're coming to view them. That's a thing of the past, but we still have some that will come in and they want to just review the document. Sometimes it could be a personnel file. This is a great example. You have maybe a police officer that's already left the city of Bowling Green, but maybe they're applying with another agency. So maybe that agency wants to come in and take a review of the previous police officer's personnel file. They have the ability to do that. They may not want copies. They may just want to just kind of thumb through, see what type of candidate they're dealing with, or take any types of training information that they may think would be feasible for the agency to keep. We have 5 business days to respond. That was recently changed by legislation. It used to be 3 business days. I'm gonna tell you, we were rock stars at 3 business days. Our average, which we keep this for performance measurement purposes, our average for all of those open records, almost 400 a year just out of our city clerk's office, we averaged about 1.5 days. So we really did amazing. And again, I say that a lot of that contributed to us being able to respond electronically. That way there's not a holdup of making copies. That turnover took a lot longer for us. So 5 business days I thought was a very, very generous, but there are a lot of cities in the Commonwealth that I talk to, a lot of city clerks. They're a one-man show and they deal with everything all in their department. They're dealing with utilities, they're dealing with the finance type things, they're dealing with HR. So the 3 business days for the small cities, that was not, they were not capable of fulfilling that. So that's why legislation said, okay, we're gonna increase that to 5 business days. The city can't deny inspection. Again, we have to have very clear evidence of that. If we don't, then there could be an appeal filed through the Attorney General's office, and we don't want that. Very, very few times do we have appeals, and in my almost 17 years, we have had very few, particularly that's come out of the clerk's office. I know a lot more people try to file appeals with police, but we typically, we win those cases, and I say that because we have clear evidence. Yes, ma'am.
I'm just wondering what kind of situation might cause that.
Okay, so for example, one I do remember, this is an actual police one, but if someone filed a request and they didn't get a response within the required time frame, they could easily file an appeal to the Attorney General's office and they would find it to be a violation. The city would have been in violation if there wasn't a response. Now, sometimes what will happen is our city attorney will be the one that will respond to, once the Attorney General's office lets us know, hey, we have an appeal related to this specific open records request, then the attorney can maybe respond and say, well, we never received it. We have no record of it. So maybe they sent it to the wrong place. Maybe they didn't actually turn it in when they were claiming they did, or maybe they have proof that they turned it in and it just got overlooked. That can happen, but typically those turn into, City of Bowling Green, you need to pay more attention and make sure that you don't lose something, or that you're paying better attention to your open records requests and that you're fulfilling them in a timely manner. Also, we've had some appeals for people who don't believe we should have redacted some of the things we redacted.
Typically, again, we have statute that allows us to be able to redact someone's social security number, someone's phone number, someone's address. Maybe it's police records that deal with juveniles. Some of those things obviously get redacted. So there's exemptions for those. You're gonna find a lot of people just appeal just to appeal because they were hoping they could get more. And unfortunately, that's not the case. But that is why for the city, it is so important in every one of our responses to these open records, if there are things that have been redacted and taken out, we have an obligation to tell them the reason and the KRS exemptions for every single one of those redactions. That's why it's so important for us to be sure, because that's a requirement by law. We have to tell the individual why everything is redacted, and we would put every single exemption on there. So again, or if they don't tell the specific exemption, say they just responded and sent it in and said, okay, your open records request is attached into this email. And if we didn't specifically tell, that could be a reason for an appeal. And I know that sounds very minute, but to someone on the outside, they could look at that and say, you did not thoroughly respond to me, and you did not tell me why you redacted these things. So that's why it's so important for us to follow all of the rules and regulations. We definitely don't want to hear from the Attorney General's office. Hope that answered your questions. But is that what you meant, though, about why someone would file an appeal?
The city may deny inspection.
Yes, okay.
That's what I was wondering.
Yeah, so the types of denial of inspection would be, again, if there's certain things in there that had to be redacted. I'm just trying to think of things, and Jen can speak up and help me if you think of something right offhand. But for example, you couldn't come in and ask me for a copy of a background check on a police officer, because those are not subject to disclosure. They're not subject to disclosure for anyone. That is correct.
Yeah,
Yes.
Lots of different things with personnel files, like evaluations and
Yes.
stuff like that.
Yes. I mean, and again, I'm using police because they are the ones that have a lot more complex things. If you were to contact us and say, I want a copy of a municipal order or ordinance, or you want a copy of a bid that was submitted by such and such company, that's real easy for us to produce.
Well, and now the new regulations, they're not considered a Kentucky resident who can deny.
That is correct. Great point. So also in legislation back a few years ago, some would disagree that they didn't like this new law. But lots of states in the U.S. do this. But if you are not a resident of the Commonwealth, if you do not own your own business or somehow work for a business that is in the Commonwealth of Kentucky, we now can deny and not respond to any open records request. Florida does that, Tennessee may, but it became a fad, if you will, with a lot of states who said, we're not responding to requests from people from California because they're not obviously city residents, but they're not, taxpayers. They are not people that reside in the Commonwealth. So why do they have a vested interest in what you're doing in a city that's in Kentucky? So I think that's where this all stemmed from. Again, there was a lot of opposition from some folks about this. It does make our job easier, but I will tell you, we didn't really have a lot of people from out of state that were making those types of requests, so we didn't have to worry about it. But that is definitely a reason for us to deny. So we have a blanket letter, if you will, that comes from me that says, this is why we're denying. If you don't meet this criteria, then we have the ability to be able to deny an open records request. Yeah, thanks, Jen.
Is the news media treated any different than the public?
No, they are not. They have to file open records requests just the same. And so they also are listed they're in the list of making sure that maybe they're not necessarily a resident, but the media does have access to records, but they are not treated any differently. They cannot receive some of the same things that are exempt, personal information, things like that. That would still be exempt for them as well. Wonderful question.
Ashley, what about out-of-state media? Is there an exemption for that?
Yes, because they're a news organization, so they are able to still file an open records request. So WDRB, that's out of Louisville, they would also be able to file an open records request for something. They would still be able to get that. They're not out of state. I used a bad example. But still, yes, yes. Okay, so here's a little funny. We do feel like this from time to time, but I guarantee you that we don't turn anyone away. Again, great lead into talking about the media. You know, I know a lot of times we have felt this way. That, oh, they're snooping for something. They're looking for another story. You know, they're looking for a new headline. Well, that's not just the media anymore. That's now people on social media. That's now, you know, your bloggers and your YouTubers or whoever is out there. You know, they're looking for something. So yeah, we may feel like this from time to time, but I can assure you that our division makes sure that that we're doing what we're supposed to do, and that if there's a record, then you all have access to it unless it's exempt. Okay, so this is just a little glimpse of a couple of pictures of our records retention facility where I mentioned Jen is at. Again, it houses lots of various records throughout the city. So whether it's personnel, legal, police records, all of our municipal orders and ordinances. Also, you will see there's a computer screen there and some gadgets beside it. So the city used to do a lot of microfilm, and I don't know if anyone knows what that is, but you know, it's on a roll. And we have done that for years because that was our backup to our hard copy original document. And the idea behind microfilm is that would never be something that would become non-existent. Okay, so we all know our thumb drives will eventually be non-existent, but you know, your floppy disks and your, you know, all of those things that have went through the motions over the years, you would never find a way to get rid of microfilm. There's always microfilm machines and readers, so that's what that is. This is a very new age microfilm reader. Our old reader used to be with the lamp, and you would roll it through, and it was a really big bulky machine. It cost us a lot of money on replacing bulbs and having service done. So we now have this, and literally it's almost like it's a very small device, and it reads onto a computer screen. And so you have that monitor there, very easy to print. We still have lots of microfilm rolls. We will forever keep those. But we now, the clerk's office has taken on the role of just digitizing. So we have lots of digital records in PDF form that are kept on its own hard drive and kept up with by our records management coordinator. So we do not, also, this is a cut to our budget because it costs a lot to have microfilm done. And so we had to pay a third party to come in and do that. That had to be bid out. So guess what? We're saving the taxpayers, and the city's budget is being cut back because we are digitizing in-house and we're not microfilming anymore, which I am so excited about. That means we don't have to budget for it. That means it's saving everyone, and we're able to do that in-house. So that's a really big deal for us. So we were able to do that since I became city clerk in 2008. So I said 2008, 2018. But anyway, so I was really excited about that initiative.
So, how is that protected over there? That looks pretty old.
Yeah, so
Fire, earthquake,
yeah.
whatever. Bomb.
So there is special fire protection that was installed in that facility. So that's why when you go in, you can see that the way everything is ran, it's not water. It may it's a foam.
It's a different chemical.
Yeah. So it's a different type of chemical that's in there. So everything was done as far as a protection, yes. But that's also why it was very important to have these records digitized. And so they are on a hard drive that regardless, that would be kept by our information technology department as our backup. But yes, it is supposed to protect. I can tell you, it's not gonna protect everything. Obviously, a flood, a tornado. We know that there are so many cities that lost everything in the tornadoes a couple of years ago, or a year and a half ago, there was no saving that. It doesn't matter what type of special protections you put in, it's really difficult to protect everything. But great question. Yes, a lot of those things are in certain protected areas with a special fire system and sprinkler system. Yeah.
I was just looking at all those open papers.
Yes, those are actually plans.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's why it's really important for us to digitize, because that's our backup, if you will. Okay, so municipal orders, this is a little did you know, and you can go back to these, but municipal orders and ordinances, they have to be retained permanently, forever and ever and ever. So that is why it's so important for us to have those personnel records. I talked about 60 years. And again, that's 60 years from the date of hire, then we're able to destroy. So also the clerk's office and Jen specifically is making sure, hey, if it's been the 60-year mark, okay, it's time to purge those and destroy those records. We also have to be very careful, and when those are destroyed, we go through a company to be able to have those shredded, because it has a lot of personal information in there that we would not want to release to the public. Minutes of various boards and commissions, those have to be retained permanently. Felony investigation files, 80 years. And then obviously we have the schedule that we have to abide by. And we are very fortunate to have this records retention facility, because a lot of cities do not have the ability to be able to do that. So we are very grateful for that. So I'm going to switch gears, talking about boards and commissions. Our Board of Commissioners approves to various city boards. They may be joint with the county, or they may just be solely a city-appointed board, committee, commission. Those are all available on our website. You can see those. I encourage you, if you are, specifically if you're a city resident, if you live within the city limits, and it's specific to a city board, we are looking for volunteers. I encourage you to volunteer to be on a board or a committee. You may have a specific interest in one that you would like to be on. Please, if you do, give it some thought, and you could send an email or a bio or resume to me or Mayor Todd Alcott. He makes those recommendations, but we are always looking for volunteers. I mean, I cannot say enough about how much we appreciate the volunteers that are on our boards and committees now. They're very important. They're giving their time to us and serving on a board that means a lot and is very important to the city. They do make a lot of decisions, and they are very important. There's the website that you can go to. There's a form on there. Again, you can send your bio or resume in if you have any interest. But we are always looking for volunteers. So we're going to open it up for questions, thoughts, comments, anything that interests you. Yes, ma'am.
You did say that you were the city resident.
On some of them, on the city-only boards, and those, hopefully in the list, it's specific enough. So examples, the Board of Ethics. It is only a city board, so every person on there has to live within the city limits. There may be a board, the Human Rights Commission. That's a joint board, so there is half county, half city. So you could be, you could live either in the city or the county, and those are both approved by Fiscal Court and the Board of Commissioners. So there's various boards that may interest you or that may fit the criteria of where you reside. But I know that's our biggest problem is many people want to serve, but if they live outside the city limits, some of those boards they can't serve on, unfortunately.
Move to town.
Yeah.
Is city annex considered?
That
city?
is, yes, that's a really good question. A lot of people ask us that, and I've never quite understood. I don't know why that has never really been communicated well, but city annex does mean you are in the city limits. And I think it's for a lot of people who have lived in the time when they were there during the annex. And so if you've been there that long, then a lot of people ask the question, well, wait a minute, does that mean I'm in the city or am I not? You definitely are.
I guess if you pay city taxes and
That
county
is
taxes,
correct.
you should know that you're.
Yes, but that's very confusing. A lot of people ask us, well, I live in city annex. What does that mean? Am I actually a city, in the city limits? Yes.
I have another question.
Yes.
Is this the website that you were referring to through everything? Is this one?
No, that's specific to the boards and commissions.
Okay.
But if you just go to bgky.org,
Okay.
that is where you can go to all different departments. You can see forms, you can see our code of ordinances, all 28 chapters that we have. If you don't have anything else to do and want some reading material, you can go check out our code of ordinances. But there's really good reasons to go to the code of ordinances. Say you're wanting to know if your neighbor can have chickens. Then you go to our animals section in chapter 5.
What's the quick answer for that?
Yes, they can. They cannot have roosters, and they can have up to 4 or 5. Yeah. Chickens, no roosters. That is a very big going topic amongst lots of cities right now. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm just wondering, how does a citizen get something for the commission to speak on or to have at the meeting, to open it at the meeting?
Okay, so you're just saying just to make public comments at the meeting, or do you
No,
want?
just to actually put a citizen, ask for something to be put on the agenda?
Okay, so, wonderful question, because a lot of people call us and they'll ask, well, I want to get something on the agenda. So a citizen cannot put something on the agenda. Someone needs to sponsor that. So my suggestion is, if there is something that you feel really strongly about, that you want the board to take action on, and it may not even actually be an action. It may be something that they don't have to take before the full board and have a municipal ordinance on. It may be something they can take care of internally, that administration can take care of. So a good example would be, you want paving on a certain street or sidewalks in a certain area. I would encourage you to contact your elected officials, number one, and you can do that by emailing them or calling them. Then, in which they would be able to get with our city manager, and our city manager may be able to handle those things administratively and it not have to go before the board. So he would get with the public works director, they would assess the situation, and they may just make it happen. Or they may respond and say, okay, that's in the works, that's coming up in our next fiscal year budget. So they are able to help you in those situations. A lot of times the elected officials are gonna go to the city manager and ask some questions to find out how can we move forward with this citizen's request. Does that help? Okay. Sometimes, again, it may not really be an action item. It may be more for something for the administrator to be able to handle. Yes, ma'am.
I may have missed it, but I know if you go to the Justice Center, you go through security screening.
Yes.
Do you do that?
You do not do that here.
People can just bring weapons and stuff?
Yes, so a couple different things. It's been a little bit, I don't know, I'm gonna say over 5 years ago. The city of Bowling Green used to have on all city municipal buildings that it was unlawful, illegal for you to carry, conceal carry into a city building. Then our previous Board of Commissioners decided that when legislation said governments in the Commonwealth of Kentucky, municipal people, you can decide on your own if you want to allow concealed carry or you do not. So that being said, our previous elected officials, they decided we're removing all of those regulations off of all of our municipal buildings, and we are going to have our ordinance that says now that you can legally, if you have the ability to conceal carry, you can do that now in our city government buildings. There is nothing against open carry, and you can help me on this as well, but the law says, state law allows you to open carry. We cannot do anything about that. So if someone was to come in and they would have one on them in open, it would be very difficult for us not to say that we probably wouldn't hit our panic button or contact police and say, we think this is a little suspicious. I think we have a right to do that. But we cannot remove them because of open carry. Yes, we do not have metal detectors. Only the Justice Center does. Of course, obviously, they have court that is going on in their building, things of that nature. The county courthouse does not even have metal detectors either.
I thought that was very interesting because the Parks and Recreation is a city-owned building, and if they have a sign that says no concealed weapons allowed.
Yes, they may be different because of their gym and who they have in there, but I am not sure. I cannot answer that question. They may have accidentally left theirs on there, to be quite honest. That's what I think probably happened, but they are still considered a municipal building, and in our ordinance, we now allow concealed carry.
It could also be because they have.
I thought about the after school. That's the only thing I can think of. Yeah. So they fall into maybe some different regulations because of their after-school program. So that may have been, and that's a good point, Karen. Yes, ma'am.
I have another question. Are there any ordinances that are almost continually brought up to refresh or to talk about, like maybe the homeless problem?
Yeah, there's nothing in our ordinance about that specifically, but yes, I can say that Chapter 25 Code of Ethics, that comes up a lot for anyone who keeps up with what's going on, and sometimes we have a lot of ethics complaints, unfortunately. I also serve as secretary of that board. That board specifically looks at that chapter regularly. Very regularly. So they're constantly checking to make sure, okay, do we have everything in there that we need to have? Also, the Kentucky League of Cities, they work with us every 4 years to become certified as a certified city of ethics. So that's actually coming up this month. So they will review Chapter 25 Code of Ethics. That's the one that comes up a lot. Obviously, Chapter 2, our administration, that comes up because things change in our departments. Whether it be renaming a department, adding different positions, we have to always remember to go in and make those updates. And so the clerk's office, every so many years, we do what we call a codification, a judicial review, if you will, with a third party. And so they help us go through every chapter, and based on our statute and also their legal opinions, they give us like an unbiased outside legal opinion that says, we think you need to update this section of this chapter. We think you should pay close attention to this, or this statute changed. You need to make amendments to this. So we do that every so many years. So that way we're staying up to speed on what we need to do. I'm trying to think of some others that we change regularly. Yes?
Just in case you were asking this question in terms of our homeless population, unfortunately, it's not against the law to hold a sign on the corner. They are in the right of way, which is a public access on that sidewalk.
Yes.
And the federal courts have deemed that it is a freedom of speech to hold those signs, which was very frustrating for police. As long as they are not impeding traffic by entering that roadway, they are not breaking the law. Most of them are not homeless, however.
Right. And we do talk about panhandling in our ordinance, but again, you were exactly right, Melanie. It's more about as long as they, and that's why it's in the section about impeding into the right of way. When they do that or they become aggressive, That is also why we changed that ordinance. That ordinance was changed a couple of times. You know, we first say, oh, if you want to panhandle, you need to get a permit through our police department. And then we realized that probably wasn't the best thing to do. So we went back in, amended that ordinance and said, no, it's not about you getting a permit. It's about the fact that you don't become aggressive with people, because that would be unlawful per our ordinance, and also becoming at risk of getting out into the public right of way. So that is specific to panhandling, yes, but as far as homelessness, that is not specifically addressed in certain sections of our ordinance, other than in our Parks and Recreation rules and regulations. It is already not allowed for, you know, you to be in certain areas or sleep or
Sleep on
camp.
picnic tables.
You know, that already is addressed. There's only so much we can do,
Yeah.
obviously, and you have to catch them doing that. So there's various elements to that. I know that's a very specific topic, and is something that a lot of people are asking about. Yes, ma'am?
I'm still thinking about no security in these buildings. Now, we can probably say, well, we've never had a shooting in this town, city. I mean, that don't mean they're gonna happen.
Well,
A person can walk in back there.
you're exactly right.
City commission.
Yes.
And back to the meeting.
No, you're exactly right. So if you walked in, some of you probably took the elevator, but if you walked up the steps, since I have been here, when I first started, I sat at the very front desk, and there was no glass, no barrier. People could just come on back with me behind my little desk, and it's so odd now to even think that that was what happened in 2006. It's really weird. And obviously not counting the fact that COVID has happened, and now I'm like, oh, please give me my personal space. But we now have ballistic glass that is on all of our doors and entrances, but it is not in here. And the reason for that is because the city still wants people to be welcome into our public meetings, because that's where it all happens. Planning Commission meets here.
There's also
I will,
officers.
yeah. So then under here, you can't see it, okay? Now, it doesn't help people out here. But underneath, against this, there is some ballistic that is behind here that you don't see, okay? That was also implemented when we started the ballistic glass in most of our areas. It's not. I do agree. We do have those. We have those as well. We have panic buttons that are at some of our desks. There's a panic button up there. And so,
Cameras all over the place.
yes, lots of cameras.
It's kind of like Bowling Green doesn't have tornadoes, oh, yeah?
Yep.
I mean, they did.
Yeah.
Ashley, we were talking about the officer station, too.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. Yes, there's always officers here. But again, yeah, they usually sit here. One sometimes sits in the back.
But you do
It
have a
is.
camera, you do have a surveillance, there's tons
Well,
of it.
the cameras
If
that you,
somebody's
yes, the
seeing
cameras
it,
you see here they're videoing, but they're live. So they're
You don't
on.
have a little room somewhere with the cops sitting in it watching to
No,
see what's happening.
we do not. Now, downstairs in our lobby, we also implemented cameras there. There's also a camera at our front door of City Hall that points outward. There's one that's on our stairways when you come up. So we've implemented a lot of different things in the last 15 years that was never there before, obviously because of security reasons. But yes, I feel like we will never be completely protected. And in here, we're at a disadvantage because we're holding public meetings. It's so critical that we still allow people to be able to feel like they can come, and we still have the ability to speak to them, and not make them feel unwelcome.
Well, I'm public, and I would feel safer if I knew there was a cop in a little room looking at all this stuff.
Yeah, well, we're lucky we have a police officer that's always here. So, and that's the same way with the Planning Commission meetings. They meet here. Code Enforcement and Nuisance Board, they meet here as well. And those are public meetings, and those are televised. BGMU Board, they also meet here. Yes, ma'am.
I was just gonna say with the open carry, I mean, you can go out to a local restaurant and people come in with a gun on them. I see them at the flea market, you see them the grocery store, anywhere you go, you can see people like that, and that's open carry. Does it make me feel safer? No, because I see the people that think they're somebody carrying a gun and they wouldn't even be able to get to it if they needed it, but, you know, that's.
Melanie, did you have
One of
something?
us that know that there
Okay.
is somebody in here.
That's
that
right.
doesn't have a gun.
That's
Okay.
right.
All right. Yes.
With Bowling Green growing, you think they'll ever increase the number of commissioners?
Of what? Number of commissioners.
Yeah, personally, I hope not. I just know other cities that, you know, for example, Glasgow, they're relatively small. I think they have 12.
How do they get anything done?
So, but they're a mayor council form of government. It's very different because their mayor is in charge of those day-to-day activities. We have part-time mayor, part-time elected officials. So I don't necessarily see that happening. You know, also that brings you into the question of, you know, I know a lot of people have asked this question, and I don't want to start a new topic of talking about, you know, will we ever, you know, combine our governments, have some type of, you know, a consolidated government with the county. That takes years to implement. That is not something that you could just do overnight or put on the ballot for a vote. That takes a very long time to consolidate governments. So if anyone thinks that that's coming, I think that if it is, it's a long time down the road. Yes.
If you get citations, and you, disagree, and you want, like, the falls on deaf ears, is this the forum to go to allow a citation?
What kind of citation?
Various, just any.
Like a code enforcement or? Code enforcement, yeah, that would be, so the Neighborhood and Community Services Department, Code Division, that's where you would start. And then citations that get appealed go before the Code Enforcement and Nuisance Board. And they meet here once a month.
What day is it?
It is the fourth Tuesday of the month. Yeah.
It has to be on the agenda for you to.
Yes, so you would contact Code Enforcement Division at Neighborhood and Community Services, and then they would prepare the agenda, and then that would be on there if you want to appeal. Yes, good question. Yes, Sam?
Talking about the mayor and commissioners thing, I mean, right now they're all nonpartisan.
Yes.
Positions.
Yes.
And I know it gets brought up every now and then about making those partisan.
Yeah, good, yeah, really good topic.
How
That's,
would that happen if it were to happen?
yeah, that's in legislation right now. So I'm monitoring that bill. That's also another part of my job is to make sure that I'm keeping up with what is going on in legislation and what bills are being passed. So very good comment. I have received some feedback from some representatives that I've reached out to. I'm not very certain that it will pass. But it is a House bill and a Senate bill. Right now, they're worded exactly the same. I'm not sure why they felt the need to have two different bills about the exact same topic, but it is for local governments to be all partisan, and we have never been partisan. So I'm not sure what the future looks like, but as of right now, it still remains nonpartisan. And whether I think it's right or wrong, indifferent, I definitely don't have an opinion about that. But I do know that it seems a little bit easier if we remain nonpartisan because you hope the need to keep politics out of local government. And I think that that's really what most people think when they think nonpartisan. So,
When you say legislation, that's statewide.
yes.
And it's a city.
Yes, that is correct. Yes, so we will wait and see where the bill heads. But as of right now, I'm not feeling certain that that's going to pass. But if you're opposed to that, then I would suggest you contact your legislators. It would be a really great time for you to do that. That's a perfect perfect statement right now because they are voting on that. Any other comments? Thank you all so much for engaging and talking with me.
That's the way of the world. It sure is.
I hope you all learned a lot.